muscles. The sensors will receive wireless signals that reconnect your muscles with your brain, allowing you to walk again. Today, most images of your organs are hours or even days old by the time your doctor sees them. But 50 years from now, physicians will see images in real time, even as they operate. At the Oregon Health University, Jonathan Lindner is developing a new way to see the body using an unlikely tool: bubbles.
Often when we're doing ultrasound of the heart, we're not able to see the detail that we need to make a clinical decision. So what we do is we make ourselves some tiny bubbles. We agitate this liquid, we inject it into the patient's bloodstream, and the bubbles make their way to the heart. And we're able to see, with these microbubbles, detail that we were not able to see before.
Traditional ultrasound shows only the outlines of the heart muscles. Microbubbles light up the entire heart wall and can reveal damaged tissue. The concept is simple. Microbubbles act like tiny bells. When hit by ultrasound waves, they vibrate and emit waves of their own, revealing more detail.
During a high-pressure peak, they contract. During the low-pressure troughs, they expand. And because of that, they essentially ring in the ultrasound field and produce very strong ultrasound signals.
Engineering the bubbles is a science unto itself. First, Lindner mixes one of the body's fats with saline and dye. Then, he injects a gas into the liquid, activates a vibrating metal tip, and the bubbles form. In these magnified capillaries, you can see the bubbles flowing. 100,000 of them would fit on the head of a pin. In the future, microbubbles will do much more than produce better pictures. They'll act like guided missiles. Lindner is learning how to attach genes and drugs to the bubbles. And with his colleagues, he's experimenting with a powerful ultrasound beam to deliver drugs to diseased tissue.
In order for us to do drug or gene delivery, what we do is we load up the bubbles, and then we use high ultrasound energy to pop the bubbles and drive our payload into tissue. So here you see bubbles in an artificial blood vessel, and we're going to strike them once with high-power ultrasound and essentially destroy them.
By bursting the bubbles on command, he's able to deliver drugs to tissue with pinpoint accuracy. The result? Smaller doses and fewer side effects. Microbubbles will change forever how we treat disease and examine the body.
What in the world? Next layer. Last time I saw an artificial heart was in 2040. This one's even made of real polymers.
Looks like it took a hit.
There's tearing near the energy cell. Clear case for a new heart. How's he insured?
Platinum.
Good for him. I'll need a tissue sample for the new heart before we bring him round.
Building a heart from scratch is no longer just a dream.
You're gonna open me up.
From a few of your own cells, a new heart made by a printer. "50 years from now, we'll have cures for trauma victims that would seem like miracles today."
Your left thigh's been fractured and your hip is dislocated. 2 ribs and a second lumbar vertebra are also fractured, but you have a bigger problem. Your artificial heart has fissures.
You're gonna open me up.
You need a new heart. The print's already in progress. It'll only take another 20 hours.
Iris scan identified. Marie Balzac. Status, cleared for security zone. Have a nice evening.
In this high-security area, gene specialists have processed the patient's tissue sample. Now they are using it to print a heart
If your car gets banged up because you're in a car accident, what do? You go to the body shop and get a new door or fender. But if you happen to be in that same accident, you could die. Now, consider this. In the United States alone, there are 91,000 patients waiting for an organ transplant. And of them, 18 die every day for an organ that never comes. What we need is a human body shop. And in 50 years' time, tissue engineering could change everything.
A child today with a defective heart valve has limited options. Valves from animals don't last long, and artificial valves can cause clots. Steven Juckenheuvel wants to avoid these problems by implanting the world's first heart valve grown exclusively from the body's own tissue.
We are moving away from engineering and mechanical replacements and trying to biologize more, to replace foreign materials step by step with the body's own tissue.
Juckenheuvel begins with a mold of a child's heart valve. First, he injects a mixture of heart valve cells and protein into the mold. Then, adds a blood clotting agent and other ingredients. Together, they bond like a superglue. Within an hour, he has the rough form of a heart valve, which he places in a bioreactor. Next, he adds nutrients and cells which normally line heart valve walls. The cells latch onto the structure and start to grow. Within just 3 weeks, a complete heart valve has formed. Finally, a pump exercises the valve to strengthen its walls so it can withstand the high pressures in a human heart. Juckenheuvel believes that within 10 years, his heart valves will beat within a human body. But valves are just the start. The holy grail of tissue engineering is to grow entire organs from scratch, like the heart. At Clemson University, researchers believe the key may lie with an unexpected everyday machine.
We didn't change much, first of all. This is a conventional inkjet printer, and so what we do is we change the cartridge quite a lot. We take the ink out, we'll modify it so it can accommodate our cells. We rinse it and so on, and sterilize it as well.
To test the precision of his modified printer, Bolin first fills the ink cartridge with bacterial cells. Instead of paper, he prints on a very thin biogel. Bolin types out a name, hits print, and the machine springs into action. The cells appear to land in precisely the correct place. But will they live? After incubating them for 6 hours, the researchers check.
The green light is just the fluorescence of the cells, and that shows basically that we did two things. One is the cells were printed where we wanted them to be printed, and second is the cells divided so they survived the printing process.
Next, he tries something much more difficult. Printing layers of actual heart cells in the same spot to build up a three-dimensional structure. Within a minute, he has created the world's first printed heart tissue. But are the cells still alive? They are, and they actually beat just as in a living human heart.
What we see here are a couple of layers of heart cells that we printed using our printers. And what we want to do eventually is to print an entire heart. We may achieve this in 50 years or so, but there are a number of things to overcome. The ability to print capillaries, for example. But if we overcome those obstacles, and I think we will, then this could quite be possible.
2 days before Alain's heart transplant, the insurance department reviews his case.
Next. Stop.
Now, his attempt to hide his late-night partying could backfire.
Please include in the record, patient Degas Alain, inconsistent test results. Urine sample from 7:34 a.m. does not match urine sample taken at 12:20 in our hospital. Probability of manipulation, 80%. Request detailed check, groceries, trash, and contents of refrigerator. Suspicion of alcohol. Run.
"50 years from now, a replacement heart is manufactured on a printer.
It's over here.
In 24 hours, it will beat inside his body. In the future, health insurance could consume almost a quarter of your salary,
Can you move your leg?
but it provides medical miracles.
Okay, Monsieur Degas. Now I'll activate the chip in your head.
This single chip will help him walk again.
Let's practice some walking. Monsieur Degas,
Does a brain chip sound impossible? Think again.
ready?
Today, there are hundreds of thousands of patients worldwide who are paralyzed. But in the future, we will have a computer chip that connects the brain directly to an arm or a leg, bypassing the injured spinal cord, and the paralyzed will walk again.
Few people have thought as much about how to restore motion to paralyzed patients as John Donahue. For the last 20 years, he has been probing the mysterious signals of the brain. Every movement we make is controlled by brain cells called neurons. They emit millions of spikes of electricity, a storm of neural activity that is the secret language of the brain. Donahue wants to read it.
The long-term goal was to see whether we could mathematically decode or translate the brain's language into something that a computer could understand and use.
Matthew Nagel is paralyzed from the neck down. In 2004, he offered himself to Donahue for a daring trial. Donahue implanted an array of 100 tiny electrodes into his brain to find out if the area of the brain that controls Matthew's arm still functions.
During the surgical procedure, our goal was to put this tiny sensor into the arm area of the motor cortex, the area of the brain where arm movement signals are generated. So this tiny platform sat on top of the brain, and the electrodes, about 1 millimeter long, would then go into the brain to pick up brain signals. So what we had hoped is that we could then record the patterns of brain activity that were still remaining after spinal cord injury, and in particular, we were interested whether just thinking about moving would allow us to drive a computer or other devices.
The brain signals were relayed through a cord to a computer.
Going to open the first email, which says congrats. It says you are doing a great job. But the second email, which states...
Incredibly, within just a few days, he could move a cursor by thought alone.
Next, I'm going to paint a circle.
This circle was drawn simply by thinking.
That's the best circle I can do.
The next step for Matthew is to control an entire arm or hand again. But before